And welcome everybody to the PCS Like a Pro show. I'm your host, Megan Harless, as always. And you might be noticing that we have a different guest today. If you watched last week and you saw at the end of the show, I mentioned how we were supposed to have Mallory from Mama on the Move on today to talk about PPM tips and things that you should know. We had a little scheduling conflict, so we're going to shift gears for a little while, but we'll have her on at a later time. So if you're planning a PPM, stick around with us. We'll have some information about that coming in a later show. For today, I just want to remind everybody, as you are setting up your moves on DPS and you start getting your TSP assigned to you, you're going to be contacted about doing something called a pre-move survey or a survey of some sort. And in the past, it usually meant somebody coming to your home and they would kind of walk around your home and take a look at what it is you have and what's being moved. Nowadays, it's gone more digital to video surveys or virtual surveys. Sometimes you're just walking around taking a video. Other times you have somebody on the other end and you're kind of FaceTiming them. They do this as a way to see what it is that you have and to be able to get an accurate estimate of like how many boxes is your home going to need, how big is your crew going to need to be, how many days is it going to take to pack you. So don't think it's this weird thing of why do I have to do this. It's that way they can get a better estimate of also like the truck size or the number of crates that are going to be needed for your move as well. So just if you got your move set up or you're being contacted by your TSP and they're talking about a move survey, just know that's what it is. They just want to get a good idea of what it is that you're moving, if anything extra is needed, and so they can properly plan the logistics for that. So we're going to get right into today. We're going to be talking with my friend, Jackie Williams here. Jackie, thank you so much for joining us today.
Absolutely. I'm so glad to be able to help out this morning because you know what? Life happens and you just got to pick up and roll with the punches for sure.
No, absolutely. So today we're going to be talking about OCONUS and what you need to know if you are planning an OCONUS move. So Jackie, can you just take a moment and tell us a little bit about yourself?
Absolutely. So my husband, Aaron, and I, we actually just celebrated our 15th anniversary, and we've been together for 16 years, living the military life. But I actually grew up in the military. I was born overseas in Germany to my dad, who was a missileer and living his best life in Germany, and my mom, who's German. And I actually spent the first 10 years of my childhood living overseas in Europe. And I remember in 1992 when we moved to Redstone Arsenal in Alabama, the culture shock of it, but I don't know how my mama did it. I don't ever remember us living out of suitcases or uncomfortable or anything like that. Definitely not the chaos that I felt like my family just went through last summer. But we have been to multiple locations throughout the United States. And recently, last summer, we returned from 5 years overseas in Korea. And so that is our big OCONUS experience most recently. And I'll tell you, 6 years ago, when I was sitting in the front lawn of infantry barracks, holding orders to South Korea, it definitely was quite the experience because the orders that my husband was going north to Camp Red Cloud, and they were very much convinced that my kids and I were going. And at that point, Camp Red Cloud was not command sponsored. And my family and I knew that. And so we were just kind of like, what are we doing? And so at one point, the boys and I put in a HAP, which is a homestead or advanced placement. And the Army said, we'll grant your wish. We'll send you to Hawaii. But the ultimate goal was to get our family as a whole to Korea. And we had the discussion of, if we get to go overseas, how long are we willing to stay? And we had decided at that point, we were willing to stay for back-to-back assignments. So as you're looking around your house and you're starting to figure out, what are you taking, what's going into storage, that was a huge factor in it was, what we're putting into storage, is that something that in 5 years from now, we're going to be okay with whatever condition it comes back to us in, knowing that there wasn't going to be much control in it. So, but we have 2 wonderful boys. Duke is our 5th grader. Kanan is our 8th grade man-child. You'll see him. He's fully grown and all. I blame COVID. He was my baby going into COVID, and now all of a sudden he looks fully grown. And in the course of COVID, Luna, our dog, showed up in our yard, and she never left us. And she definitely was saving us more than we have saved her. But she made the big trip with us last summer from Korea here. And she had the most expensive airline ticket. And it was one of those things where my husband, Aaron, had the inside the day we officially adopted Luna that he had already started doing the research and knew we wanted pet insurance for her, and we needed to start saving every month for her because we knew she was coming with us wherever the next orders were taking us to, but that potentially she could cost us a pretty penny to make sure she could come with us. And I do have to caveat, our return from Korea became very unorthodox when my husband had a heart attack 3 weeks before the move. He's perfectly fine. You'll see him running the golf course here at Leavenworth, and you'll be like, that guy? Yeah, just eat your Cheerios. You'll be fine. But we suddenly went from having a space on the Patriot Express for Luna to suddenly needing to fly commercially back to the United States for the sake of my husband's health. And Luna couldn't come with us on the commercial flight because of the heat embargoes that were put in place to protect her. And so all that money we had been saving since we had adopted Luna suddenly came into play. So my biggest advice to you guys is always start putting those, a couple of dollars away where you can, because you never know how suddenly your move is going to change. So, but that is Team Williams, and you will find us here on Main Post at Fort Leavenworth. So if ever you're coming through town for anything, or you get to call Fort Leavenworth home, definitely come see us, come have coffee with me, come just enjoy, the company for sure. So, but definitely, ask away all the questions. I am here to share with you my tidbits of knowledge and lessons learned from our experience of going overseas to Korea and then coming back. Here.
All right, so we've got some comments here coming in, and they're going to show up as Facebook user because they're coming from our group that this is streamed into. So first one we've got is Julie Eshelman that is joining us. We've also got Stacy Benson, and then this one's coming from Megan Williams, that we love having Jackie joining us today. So if you guys got comments or questions about OCONUS experience, go ahead, drop them into the comments. We'll ask Jackie everything that we possibly can, because a lot of folks we know are going OCONUS. And as we talked previously, Jackie, thinking that going OCONUS sounds like this big, exciting thing and that we all can't wait to do it. And then we start looking at like the process and breaking it down and all of the steps we have to go through to be able to get there. And then it starts becoming a very stressful and, crazy process. And then we start thinking like, why don't we just stay in Texas? Like Texas isn't so bad. Like, why do we go through all of this to be able to get to somewhere? So if you guys got questions, like I said, feel free to drop them into the comments. We'll definitely get them asked. So first, we're going to try to break this down a little bit more. So let's walk through what families should be thinking of when it comes to receiving their OCONUS orders. Let's start with cars, because that's always a big thing. Do you sell them? Do you store them? Do you ship them? How do you decide what the best course there is for you?
So first of all, where are you going OCONUS? That's a big one to know. There are some locations where you're not allowed to bring your car because it's part of what's called the SOFA agreement that they have, as well as the fact that they might not drive on the same side of the road that we do here in the United States. So do consider that your location because that will have a big play into that. Also, consider the fact Korea, we learned they go minimal, tiny little cars. And so bringing over our big Honda Pilot was like bringing over a semi truck compared to their vehicles. And so it was definitely one of those things where I was like, oh, where am I parking my car? Because their parking spots are half the size of my car, But it definitely is one of those things where you do want to consider where are you going? It'll say on your orders, first of all, if the military will ship your vehicle or not, and how many. Typically, it's one vehicle overseas. or if they're going to have you store it because they're not going to ship it. And again, it's one of those things to consider is where are you going, what type of vehicle you have. At the time when we went overseas, we were leasing a vehicle. And then we had our Honda Pilot that we had fully paid off and all. So for us, it was we're taking the Honda because it's fully paid. We're not taking the vehicle that we're leasing. We'll give it back to the company. So that was a super easy one for us. And because we knew we were going overseas extended time, we definitely knew we didn't want to store a vehicle long term. Also consider for any vehicles you're leaving behind, where are you storing those? Are you having family or friends keep those and they're going to be able to turn the key, a couple of times frequently to make sure the vehicle's still moving, the oil's good, the engine's running, things like that are being done while you're gone. So definitely consider that as well. The other one too is consider the fuel cost. If you're taking your vehicle overseas, I love my SUV. It has been fantastic. But that thing takes a lot of gas, and yeah, when I was on post in Korea, gas wasn't as expensive, but I knew for all the amazing road trips that we took with our Honda Pilot, that at some point I was going to have to gas up on the economy. And I knew, wow, that was going to hit my pocketbook. And so that's just something to consider as well as that. If you're going off post and having to gas up, what is the cost of that and everything like that? So it definitely is one of those things to consider is when you're looking at what vehicle you're taking with you is first of all, verify that you can take a vehicle. If you cannot, then decide, are we storing because we have somebody who can turn that vehicle on every so often, make sure it's good, it's running and everything like that, it'll be taken care of. Or am I, possibly considering selling that vehicle? Something to consider too is when you come back, you're going to ship your vehicle back from overseas. Will you have a vehicle waiting for you right away? Are you potentially going to be in a duty station where you might not need a vehicle right away? Here at Fort Leavenworth, we actually intentionally picked our neighborhood where we're living at because we knew we were going to buy bicycles and everybody was going to bike to all the places that they were going to. So my husband made the 1 mile walk to work for the first few weeks while we were carless still. My boys rode their bicycles to school because it's under a mile from our house. And so they kind of we had that plan in place. But consider that too, is not just going over what the vehicle situation is, but also when you're returning. So I will tell you, a lot of times your overseas duty stations, they'll have public transportation on post. Your communities right around the overseas duty stations will have public transportation. And when you get overseas, you're all in the same boat. So you will very easily be able to find somebody who'll be like, hey, I will gladly take you from lodging and help you get your stuff to your house, and you have your sponsor as well. So definitely don't feel like, oh my gosh, I'm going overseas and I'll have nothing and I won't know. No, you'll have this amazing community of folks that hopefully will come around and love you and all. But definitely consider those are you allowed to bring a vehicle? If you are, is the vehicle paid off? Is it a vehicle that is going to be able to run for the next 2 years? If you're going to store, who's potentially going to watch your vehicle while it's stored, or is it just going to sit in a facility and all? And then what are you going to look at when you come back as well, waiting for you on the other side when you get back stateside? So definitely those were the things that we really looked at as a family when we considered what vehicle we were taking overseas with us and what our vehicle situation was going to be when we came back as well. So, and I can say for us, it took going overseas, it took my vehicle right at the amount of days that they say it was going to. Like I shipped my car on August 1st and I got there right away. It was fantastic. In fact, I hadn't even taken my driver's license test yet in Korea. And I was scrambling. I was like, I can't even pick up my car because I don't have a license yet, kind of thing. But so it definitely was one of those things and that was the first thing to arrive back in the United States as well as we shipped our car. Actually, after we shipped our vehicle, we shipped our vehicle after we shipped our household goods. And our vehicle definitely got here well before our household goods did. And so that definitely was nice. So definitely, they're really good about that. The website that Megan shared will give you all the information as far as what your car needs to look like when you drop it off, and as far as scheduling your appointments and where your nearest place would be to ship as well. So absolutely.
Yeah, so if you're going to ship a car or if you're going to let the military store it, PCSmyPOV.com is where you need to go to get all of that set up. But, you really touched on some of the good points. Things that we hear a lot within our groups is, will this size of car work over there? Because a lot of places, the streets are also smaller too. They're more narrow than what we currently have here. And then we've got, when you were talking about fuel costs and everything, Destin here, located in Germany, that it's $8 a gallon. So it's definitely, we feel that strain here in the U.S., but we don't often think about, unless we have that experience where they're stationed now, what that fuel cost is in OCONUS locations as well. So what about like furniture? The thought process between that same thing, deciding, are we taking this couch? Are we storing the couch? Are we selling the couch? Other pieces? What was your thought process on deciding between the other items in your home?
So the great thing is when you get overseas, most locations will have loaner furniture for you. And some locations will actually tell you there are certain things you just cannot bring. We found going overseas to Korea, we were not allowed to bring our washers and dryers because the electrical plugs were different and all. So that made that decision super easy. Do we take the washer and dryer? Oh, we're not allowed to. Done. And for us, because we as a family had decided our intent was to be gone for 5 years, we opted not to share or not to store our washer and dryer, knowing that 5 years in storage probably was not going to turn out in our favor on that. So the other thing too was that we were able to look at what type of loaner furniture was available to us, not only when we first arrived over there, but that we would potentially be able to keep during the duration of our stay overseas. And so that kind of played a flat factor as well into choosing what are we taking with us versus what we could use from the loaner furniture while we're over there. And this is different than what your ACS loaner furniture is. This is stuff that you will actually make arrangements through housing and all, and they have warehouses. We opted to sell our dining room table set because we borrowed a dining room table set, this gorgeous, huge table with a leaf in it and seating for 10 and all, which became our COVID classroom when our schools locked down overseas and all. But so knowing that we were going to have that at our disposal, we didn't even stress about our dining room table and chair set. We also knew we had outgrown our dining room table and chair set. So we knew whenever we were going to return from overseas, we were going to make that purchase. And so keeping that in mind, we put that money away in our pockets, just like we did with our car as well. And we did with our dog. We started thinking forward. What are the things when we come back, we're going to start needing that money for? So, but we really did. We looked at, okay, what are the things we can borrow while we're over there? What are the pieces we wanted to buy while we're over there? Because they're unique pieces that are available to you only while stationed overseas. And so we considered that as well. We also looked at the potential sizing of things. Would our king size bed fit into your standard government housing overseas versus your housing on the economy, knowing that that's a potential that you would live on the economy versus in government quarters and all? Korea, the king size bed fits. So I can attest to that. We were able to take our king size bed over there. But that is something as well to look at is, what's going to fit sizing wise. Also, what are the things that if you're going to put them in long-term storage are going to do well stored and are going to benefit you when you get back from overseas? We didn't think that one all the way through. So for us in our long-term storage were our solid wood bed frames my dad had built us, the Christmas tree stand, and the shop vac. That's what was in our long-term storage when we left. None of that was of use when we got back from overseas and we're sitting in our empty house. And again, for us, we had already started putting money away because we knew we were replacing a washer and dryer. We knew we were replacing a dining room table and chair set. Our boys wore through our mismatched set of living room furniture. So we replaced those, kind of thing. What we didn't take into account was the backlog of production and delivery of items over here. And so it definitely was one of those things considering getting to order items and buy new furniture, that there was also that delay in that. So consider that, as well as if you're going overseas or coming back from overseas, is that you may not be able to buy something in inventory because the inventory is still backlogged here. So do know there is a potential of that as well if you're looking at buying at that. But it was one of those things where we looked at that long-term storage-wise. I wish someone had sat me down and said, Jackie, consider what you would like when you first get back from overseas. Bed frames that are not going to fit in your house, not helpful to you. A Christmas tree stand, as much as I am so excited that I had a live Christmas tree from down the road that looked gorgeous in my foyer, that Christmas tree stand was of absolute no use to me last September when I was sitting in an empty house. The shop vac, I mean, I cleaned kind of with it, but it was not getting the house clean, kind of thing. And so definitely one of those things was looking at, if I wasn't going to take it with me and I was putting it in storage, was it going to be of use to me, kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
The other one too I looked at, my boys' baby blankets, those precious items that I knew I didn't want to ship overseas because there really wasn't a need for them overseas, but I definitely didn't want to take the risk of putting into storage. Those went to my best friend's house here and my parents' house. And so we essentially broke it down into looking at what was the loaner furniture we could use while we were overseas, what was the furniture we wanted to buy while overseas, or we knew we were going to replace when we got back stateside, and really considering what was going into that long-term storage unit, and was it really going to help us when we got back stateside, and to help bridge that gap from the time that we landed to the time our household goods caught up to us. So, because ACS has a fantastic kitchenware set that we were able to borrow, but they did not have beds and couches and things like that. So it definitely is something to consider as well. When you're looking at furniture, the other things too are, what are the things that you would be sad if they got damaged or lost? And what are the things that make it feel like home? Is it that chair that always just, that's home, being able to curl up in that chair? Or is it that holiday decoration? We always decorate for Mardi Gras. We decorate for Mardi Gras no matter where we live at, y'all. My real tree stayed up till March 1st, y'all. Like, you can ask my neighbors. We took down the Christmas and we put Mardi Gras on it, but that's something we do. We decorate for Mardi Gras everywhere. But consider that when you're looking at what are the things you want to take with you, and what are the things that are going to go into storage as well. So,
yeah, no, absolutely. We've got a couple questions here in the comments I want to get to. So again, this didn't show up as Facebook user, but it's coming from Megan Williams in the group. So do you find that moving to the OCONUS duty station to be the most difficult part, or was returning to the CONUS side to be more difficult?
Hey, Megan. Hey, sister. You know what? Honestly, the excitement of going overseas, I think made it so much easier. And I'll tell you, Aaron got orders, like I said, to Red Cloud. The boys and I had orders to Hawaii. He was able to get an assignment down to Youngsung, which allowed us command sponsorship, but I had to wait for amended orders. And then I literally had basically 2.5 weeks notice to schedule transportation, the flights, figure out the sorting of what goes to storage, what goes overseas and all. But in all of that, it was just the chaos and the excitement. Now, coming back from overseas prior to Aaron having his heart attack, it definitely was one of those things where it was overwhelming, looking at the thought of trying to figure out what needed to go into unaccompanied baggage that we were willing to live without at that point, but wanted to have as soon as we got back. And knowing that there were delays in delivery, were we even going to do unaccompanied baggage, knowing that it might not actually get to us right away as intended. The other thing was looking at trying to figure out where are we going to live at when we get back stateside? The market being what it is right now, unless you already know where your housing is, that was a big thing we faced last summer too, was whoa. So I'll tell you, coming back last summer after being overseas for 5 years, in the midst of a pandemic still, Aaron having his heart attack and all of that within the 3 weeks of us trying to get on a plane, that was most stressful kind of thing. And I definitely wish I had the knowledge I had now of it, about how to keep myself calmer about some of the things, and just know that some things were just going to be out of our hands, and that we were just going to have to lean much harder on our friends and our family in this community we have around us. But yeah, I'm with you, Megan. It definitely, the coming back, and then of course the leaving, because you're leaving someplace that is part of your heart. It's become part of your family's, history now. We lived, in your guys' case, in England for 2 years. That's a big part of you now, and you take those experiences and this culture and those things back with you and all. So of course that makes it harder to leave too. So, but I'm with you. It definitely felt much more stressful coming back from overseas. And I think part of it too is because the majority of the people arriving stateside are coming from Fort whatever down the road. People forget that when you have people returning from OCONUS, they didn't drive up in a car that has all the things that you threw in your car when you left your last house in your last duty station. They are literally rolling up off an airplane with whatever they have, and for some people coming off the Patriot Express, they're rolling up with 2 suitcases, and the Hot Mess Express. And so I think sometimes we forget how hard it is to basically be vagabonds, and that their truck isn't just somewhere on the other side of the country. Their stuff is in a boat somewhere out there, and I'll tell you, that was really hard last year to watch when they were talking about the merchandise on this boat is not getting to port. And I was like, I don't care about your Halloween decorations. I want my stuff. It's not just stuff to put on the shelves of the store. Those are people's personal items, And so that definitely is, I think sometimes we forget that there's a little bit of a different struggle that we face when you're coming back from OCONUS versus CONUS and everything like that. But the great thing is we are so good as a community to come around each other and say, what do you need to borrow? My house is your house till your house gets here, kind of thing. So definitely, Megan, you're not alone in feeling the stress of coming back from overseas. So you just lean in, all righty?
Yeah, no, definitely. And it's something we always say. I mean, it may suck while we go through it, but it'll make for a great story later.
Absolutely.
So just see that light at the end of the tunnel, and you're not the only one going through it. Many people are. And that's, as you mentioned, our community is so great to be able to support each other and to be able to help each other through some of these things. We got a couple other questions from another Megan. I feel like this should be almost the Megan show happening today. So we've got another Megan. I'm going to kind of combine your 2 questions here into one, talking about, did you have a notebook or a traveling folder or something to keep everything straight? And then traveling with all those important documents, the birth certificates, social security cards, marriage certificates, all of that stuff. I'm going to drop the link to our PCS Like a Pro shop. There is a downloadable binder that you can purchase, comes straight to your email, where you can be able to, what I use as what we call our PCS binder, which mine is actually sitting right here next to me because we're planning our PCS as well. But PCS binder is a great way to get everything organized and together so you have all of that. And I will just say from my experience, and I'll let you give yours too, Jackie, is all of those important life documents, the birth certificates, marriage certificates, passports, whatever it may be, social security cards, I always suggest hand carrying those with you. You never know when they're going to be needed. If they happen to go missing, if for some reason something catches on fire in your shipment, it's just a beast to try to get items like those replaced. and then waiting for them to be replaced. When you go register, if you have kids and you register them for school, a lot of times you need birth certificates. So if you don't have those, or they get misplaced, or they get lost, or catastrophic loss, you have to wait to get those replaced for being able to register kids for school. So I would say hand carry those important documents together.
So years ago, I took a course at ACS, and then I ended up teaching the AFTB class. We talked about a bug out binder. And at that time, we lived at Fort Carson, which was susceptible to wildfires. And so I learned to have that binder. I didn't know it was my PCS binder. I just knew it was my binder that had all the things in it. And if ever we needed to bug out, all I needed to do was grab that binder. And then fast forward, when we got to Korea, we needed a Neo binder, which is something unique to Korea that they have in some of the other overseas assignments. And it turned out that Neo binder was my bug out binder, which had become my PCS binder. So one thing we do in our family is we have duplicate copies. My husband, Aaron, carries a copy when we PCS of everything: marriage license, birth certificate, social security cards. Aaron and I were both born overseas to international mothers. And so we have birth abroad certificates that we have to carry as well. And so we actually carry duplicate copies, because you never know if mid PCS you will get separated for whatever kind of thing. And so one thing we faced last year was returning from overseas. We had to pass through a health checkpoint. In Korea, very much so, was if you had a slight fever, everybody else in your party went on. The person with a slight fever would have to be held back. And so it was very real to us, the potential that if one of us ended up being sick or tested positive or whatever with our COVID test returning, I needed to be able to know that if the boys and I had to go on without Aaron, or if Aaron had to go on with the boys without me, that each of us already was set to continue on. Without stressing of who had the binder kind of thing. And also, you never want to think about it, but if one of our bags accidentally got lost, there's always another copy of it and all. But yeah, we have a binder. It is my bug out binder that became my PCS binder, that became my Neo binder, that now sits in my drawer. We actually, for the longest time, had it in a red polka dotted backpack. My parents knew the binder was in there. The boys knew. And if for whatever reason we needed to leave the house, they knew to grab the backpack. And everything was in there they needed and everything like that. But we carry those things: birth certificates, shop records, the last copy of their immunization record. It is the passports are in, actually a passport holder and all, insurance documents, proof of all of our pets. Luna has her own little divider in our binder because she too has documentation to carry and all. The household good inventory sheet goes in there. The documentations for the vehicle goes in there. Just everything. It's basically your safe in a binder kind of thing. We've also tried to be diligent over the years to make a digital copy into the cloud, so that, heaven forbid, something happen, there's always a copy of everything in the digital cloud and everything like that. But like I said, Aaron and I, when we travel, we each carry a duplicate copy of the binder. And then I typically carry the passports on me, because we do carry tourist passports, and we carry our no-fee passport issued by the military and all. But yeah, it's been one of those things. All those documents go in there. Just so you have them on there. You never know how delayed your shipment might be. It's the bag that when we stop at a hotel, even if we're PCSing across country, it comes out of the car. Like nothing else when we come out of the car. That bag with the binder comes out of the car, just in case something happens to the car overnight. We have all our documents in there and everything like that. But it's a good idea to keep all that together. And even here being a stateside, it's a good idea to know where all those documents are and have them together, because you never know what type of Mother Nature, craziness she might throw at you. And you need to be ready to just, evacuate for whatever purpose. And again, you want all those documents together, because you're enrolling kids in school, you're registering your dog, you're proving your citizenship, you're proving that's your car and all that. And that's so much easier if you have everything together in one space and all. But definitely, either consider carrying those duplicates on your spouse or putting a digital copy up in the cloud. So,
yeah, no, definitely.
Those are no fun to have to reorder either, so.
No, I remember one time I needed my birth certificate for something, and I didn't have a copy of it. And so my parents still live in my hometown. And so I was like, let me just have my dad go down to the courthouse, and it'll be easier for him to get it than for me to try to do everything online. And so I asked my dad, and my dad sent me my original birth certificate from 36 years ago that he still had in his fire safe at his house. And so he sent it to me. I was like, Dad, like, I don't feel like adult enough to have my original. Like, I wanted a copy of it, like, the one that they printed yesterday or today or whatever. Like, I don't. So now I have the original. Now I'm just like panicked about it. Like, what happens if I lose my original? But no, we're a big fan of binders. We love binders. They help keep everything organized. I love the pocket dividers. That way, if you have things, you can just easily stuff them in there, put a few extra page protectors in there. You can just shove things into there, and then it's all nice and organized. We've got Dustin here talking about how her husband thought that she was, crazy for making this binder, and then was ever so grateful that, the binder was made and they had the binder. If you guys missed it, a couple weeks ago, actually a couple months now, probably, when was it? Back in January, we had Krista Simpson on, and we'll get the link for that episode dropped into the comments for you. But we talked about preparing for the unexpected, and we talked about that bug out bag and what documents should be included in it, and making sure, if you had to evacuate immediately, whether it was a natural disaster or something else going on, like if you were in the hospital, who would pick up your kids, who would know where to go, handle things, and whatnot. So all ties into having this binder that is kind of like your lifesaver in our community. You got another question in here, Megan, that's going to tie into the next question that I want to ask. So we're just going to put it up here. So best tips for dividing your household goods into the multiple shipments. So when you go OCONUS, generally you get your standard household goods shipment. You get a UAB or UB express unaccompanied baggage express shipment. And then depending on where you're going, what you take, you sometimes also get a non-temp storage shipment. So how do you decide in your home what goes to what shipment? And then also, how do you manage that? Did you set up, because this was a question in our group recently too, was did you set up all three of those shipments to happen on the same day? So everybody was in your house packing up everything at once? Did you separate days? How did you kind of navigate that piece?
So first of all, I'm a list maker. I make lists, and I have the list of all the questions. And I actually have a friend down the alleyway who is going OCONUS, and we were talking about it. And so I told her, I said, get a notebook and start listing out all the things and all. And so for me, it was making the list of what's going in the suitcase, what are the things I need immediately. I'm going to need last second, and I'm going to need as immediately as we hit the ground, kind of thing. Then it was what goes in the UAB that I'm going to need to help us feel settled when we get there, because that'll be the first thing outside of what we carried in the suitcase that will arrive. And what is it that we need to kind of get settled in so we can kind of start living life as best as we can. And then our household goods are what are the things we're going to need, but we can wait for a little bit to get those things. And then our long-term storage was what were the things that we wanted to keep, but if something happened to our storage unit, we weren't going to be completely crushed either, knowing that it was just a storage unit, and it would be helpful to have these items, but we wouldn't be crushed if we never saw them again. Then for us, it was also what are the things we're going to send to our families or to a personal storage unit that we would be devastated if we're lost or damaged and we're gone forever, but we weren't going to take overseas with us. And then it was the consideration of can we ship things ahead to our sponsors? What are things that potentially I could order on Amazon and have shipped to them so that they're waiting for it coming back? Our parents last year had bought us pots and pans, and we said, don't order them yet. We'll order them when we land or right as we're getting ready to land in the United States. And we had them shipped to a family friend here. And so the first thing to arrive at our house, even before us, was our big box of pots and pans, and so we considered things like that as well. So I will caveat, when the boys and I went to Korea, Aaron was already in Korea. And because the boys and I were so late in PCSing that season, we ended up flying commercially, which don't bank on that. That was like the Army transportation gods looked down on us and were like, oh, we'll grant you this one because we messed up your move. And so I went to Korea with a 5 and an 8-year-old boys, and 7 suitcases, a car seat bag, and 4 carry-ons. And my boys were fantastic hauling suitcases and all. And we had a suitcase with linens, and that included bed sheets and towels. We had a suitcase that was their sports equipment. We had a suitcase with their clothes to get them through the next 90 days, kind of thing. Coming back, because PCSing is so much fun for the Team Williams, like we should write a book. My husband, we were all set to come on the Patriot Express, which I was panicking on because I'm like, what am I going to do with 2 suitcases per person? And this is how we're going to live for 90 days. And so it was a lot of really looking at what are the things that we're going to need right away, kind of thing. What are the things we were willing to borrow or we could borrow? Again, ACS has a fantastic lending closet with a kitchen box. So I knew I didn't need to bring my kitchen because I knew ACS was going to be able to carry us through. Then it was, what are the boys going to need to get settled? Well, they're going to go right into sports. All right, boys, you need to make sure you have your sports stuff. I had one leaving for camp. I'm like, okay, you have to make sure you have your camp stuff and all. Then it was, what does the dog need? What does Luna need? Like she's moving with us too. And clearly the airline forgot to give her 2 bags, so now I'm sharing a bag with the dog. But it was really looking at, what do we need to carry with us? And what are the things we were willing to borrow or were able to borrow? What were the things we might be willing to purchase, to get us through that time and all? And then what can we do without shortly, but know is coming in our UAB? So I had all that planned out. And then my husband decided to have a heart attack. So all that went out the window. And we had scheduled our shipments later. So then that put a big kibosh on that. And so we did end up coming commercially, which then we forwent our UAB because we knew we were going to fly commercially. And 5 bags a person on the airline we got to fly, meant our UAB was right with us. Do not count on that happening to you. That very much is not the standard fare for the military. So please do not count on the fact that you're going to get on a commercial flight and you're going to be able to pack 5 bags a person, because not every airline is that generous either. So it is a lot of research on your end as well. So bank on the fact that you're flying on Patriot Express. It's 2 bags a person, and you're going to ship UAB and you're going to ship your household goods. Transportation here at Leavenworth will not let you do both of those in the same day unless you're in a really crazy short-term turnaround of PCS. They don't like to do that. They don't like for you to have everything packed and crated for both your household goods and your long-term storage. It makes it very chaotic in your house. So being the person that I called people in. I was like, this is crazy. My husband's in Korea. I got kids. I'm trying to move. So I called in reinforcements. Do not be afraid to call in reinforcements. I called in. My mom flew up and she took over the boys. She was like, hey, I'm taking the boys, and I didn't have to worry about them getting into things as I was making plans for this pile is going to go into storage, boys. don't touch it. And I tried to make sure it was very much taped off, very much organized, do not touch kind of thing. Hey, this is going in our household goods, and kept it labeled. You do the vacuum seal bags with the little packets and the dryer sheet, and the Ziploc bags for everything. Like, tried to keep everything super organized and everything like that. Everything had a place. And then my best friend came up, and the day of the pack out, it was really directing traffic. All right, that's your pile. Don't touch that. The other thing, if you're able to do it, that really helped our family. We moved into lodging. And so when we came back from Korea, because of the chaos and everything like that, we moved into lodging. Everything that was going on the airplane with us was in our hotel room, and everything that was in the house, the mover showed up and I said, pack it all, and there was no question of don't touch this, don't touch that. Like, it was no, pack it all, and so we were able to make sure trash cans were out, food was out of the house. Like, there was no question of, is there something in the house that isn't supposed to? No, only thing in the house was what was going to get packed and all. So if you are in a position where you can do that, and not even worry about the do not pack closet, like, it's amazing, because you literally then can just sit back and go, pack it all. I don't have to worry about it. So we're not all very fortunate always to be in that position, or to always be able to call in reinforcements. But those were my big ones. That was a huge thing. And then, like I said, keeping everything organized, whether you have to put colored stickers on things, household goods are one color, long-term storage is another color, UAB is another color. If you have to take a room, if you've got the space, and say everything in this room is UAB, do not touch, do that. Find a system that works for you. My friend down the alleyway, she has moved all the long-term storage items that she can out of her house and into the carport right now, so that they know once their household goods are picked up, they're going to start living with that stuff again. But that way there is no mix up and accidentally long-term storage got shipped overseas, and then we're stuck with this household goods that's not going, and the same with their UAB, they're fortunate to have the space to be able to do that. But look at what kind of spacing you have, and then look at your support team. Like, absolutely use them people, they've always said, hey, call me if you need anything. This is your call me if you need anything. Hey, I need you to take the kids. My kids need a play date today that is not in my house, so that the movers can come in and do what they need to, or, hey, can you just come help direct traffic? When our household goods arrived here at Fort Leavenworth, I had two friends, because we have a multi-level house, and I said, okay, you're in charge of the first floor, you're in charge of the second floor. I'm going to have them, I've got the bingo sheet, honey, you're downstairs in the basement. And I had signs on every door of what goes in what room and everything like that. And I was like, all right, team, like, you are all part of my team. So do not be afraid to lean on those people either, so, but yeah.
No, absolutely. I think with our community, sometimes it's hard for us to ask for help. Sometimes there's a generation of us that came up during the back-to-back deployments, and it was everybody was stressed, everybody was thin, like, everybody did things themselves. But now we're in a period where we don't have that as much, and so we're able to offer help and be there for others. And it's one of those things, like, if you have a friend moving, again, we sometimes suck at asking for help, but if you have a friend moving, like, don't ask, what do you need? Just show up and say, where do I need to be? Where do you want me to be in that bedroom, out here handling things? Just show up and be there, because sometimes if you say, well, what do you need, or how can I help? It'll be, oh, don't worry about it. We can handle it. We got it. Because we don't want to burden other people, and we don't want to have to ask for help. So just show up and do something. Will also go and make the difference. So for your family, if you had to do another OCONUS move, what is there anything you would do differently? Would you add something to your UAB shipment that you didn't add? Take the air fryer with you versus the Instant Pot or whatever it was? Anything that you would change or do differently now, having gone through this experience?
So we moved over with a 5 and an 8-year-old and came back with a 10 and 13-year-old.
And so those were two very different seasons of kids that we came back with and everything like that. I will tell you the things I was super grateful I packed in my UAB and this time in our suitcases, hangers. Who knew clothes hangers would make such a difference, you know? But it was so freeing to be able to take the clothes out of the suitcase and put them in the closet. Like I felt like we were real humans living in a house now, and not just vagabonds living out of a suitcase. So definitely, and you own so many hangers. Stop buying hangers. We own so many of them already. So if you can, get some hangers. Oh my gosh. Or go buy them at the thrift shop or, kind of thing, but stop buying hangers. The other thing was a garden flag or a wreath, which it just kind of made the house feel like home. Like we live here. Even if the house on the inside looks like a bachelor pad and half empty and everything like that, those kind of items kind of make a real difference and kind of making it feel home and everything like that. And so that's a big thing. Definitely, it was, I'm like I said, I'm a list kind of gal. And so making the list really made the big difference. And again, we had curveballs thrown at us on both ends and everything like that. And I'm glad I had the list because then I was able to just scratch things out and move things around. And I will tell you, definitely being able to lean on other people was huge, kind of thing. And we don't do that well often, kind of thing. But do not be afraid. People offer you that help for a reason. They say, hey, if you ever need anything, let me know. People mean that, kind of thing. So definitely continue. Don't be afraid to call in reinforcements and use them. And then don't be afraid to use the resources in your community. Like I said, ACS is a huge help. Also go see their relocation specialists, kind of thing. Don't be afraid to ask them what insight do you have on the next place we're going to, and what kind of stuff can we borrow from you, kind of thing. And then cherish those last few weeks where you're at, and make the most of those friendships and those driveway fire pits and whatnot. Make sure you buy the tchotchkes, or you've got a person in place who can send you care packages. Oh, care packages are so important. And then just, really, things are going to go wrong. Just know things are going to go awry and everything like that. And just remember to breathe. I mean, like that's the biggest thing is, when you're lining up at SeaTech at 2 a.m. to check in for your flight that doesn't even leave for like another 7 hours and your kids are cranky and whatnot, know that you're not the only family with cranky kids. Everybody has cranky kids who have not slept for days. And you know what? Kudos to the families whose kids do. I'm so happy for you, kind of thing. But know that, we're all in this crazy move together. So you are not the only one with a crying baby. You are not the only one with a moody teenager. You are not the only one going through this. And if you need an ear to listen, I mean, dude, if you have to, come find me. I'll listen, kind of thing. But don't keep it in, because your well-being is just as important as everybody else who's moving with you in your family and everything like that. And you are that glue, and so make sure you're taking care of yourself, But yeah, there are definitely 100 different things I would change. But again, they wouldn't have taught us the things that we learned this time around. And then again, it's being financially responsible about knowing, hey, I've got a dog. So I now know I'm always putting a couple of bucks away every month because Luna goes with us wherever we go, kind of thing. And that might mean I have to pay an airline ticket for her, a very expensive airline ticket, but that's part of Luna being part of our family, and it's always good to have that emergency fund because you never know, kind of thing. So, but yeah, so many things. And again, reach out to your people. Don't be afraid to lean on people. That's a huge one. So.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So as we get close to wrapping up here, there's a couple questions I love asking every military spouse that I have on the show. So the first one is, what has been your favorite and least favorite duty stations?
Oh man, that's all right. That one's really tough. So let's see. There have been assignments I didn't like because the job was tough. We were that group that did back to back generations, or deployments were that group, and so that was tough. But I loved the people where I was at. So I always tell people, I did 2 tours at Fort Polk, and people go, oh, and there were definitely times where I was like, oh, please don't ever send me back. And when my husband came home and said, hey, we're going to a repeater base last spring, I was like, I love you, and I know I'm going to enjoy Fort Polk, but in this moment, I cannot. And then he was like, no, we're repeating a different base. And I was like, oh. But then part of me was kind of sad because I was like, oh, I kind of wanted to go back to Leesville, Louisiana, because those people love hard, kind of thing. So I will say, it's never a duty station that's bad. I think we've had some tough assignments, but overall, I have cherished every place we've been stationed at, because each of them has been exactly what we needed in that season of life. For our family. So that's a tough one. Yeah. There's not one where I wouldn't be like, oh, I'm not going back. Can't make me, the old Geo batch, kind of thing. But there isn't one where I'd be like, oh my gosh, in a heartbeat, I would go back, because I think I would go back to all of them in a heartbeat, because like I said, for each of their own reasons, they were where we needed to be at in that season. So.
Yeah. And that's a common thread for those that have been with us for a while and have watched our episodes. The common thread that we hear when I ask that question is that it all depends on the people and then that season of life that you're in, that some locations have been, bad. Great location, but they could consider it bad just because the high up tempo in their spouse's job, or it could have been a great thing because of the location and the people that they had there that kept them grounded and tied together while their spouse was off doing the back-to-backs or whatever it was. So that common thread of, the people and your season of life really decides on how a duty station is. And so that's why I always say, we always get, when order starts coming out, or the possible list of assignments start coming out, people always just like, who's had great experiences here, who's had the negative ones, what can you tell me? It's always to keep in mind just what their season of life was, because some locations are great for young families with young kids, and other locations are much better for families that have older kids. And so what's that season of life that they're in? What was that up tempo that they were experiencing? Because that can definitely kind of change it. And it may not be your same experience as well. But one thing we have learned is that the people that we meet, our community that we get connected to, is that regardless of the location, because I will tell you, I'm not a big fan of my current location, but the people that I've met here have made it definitely a great location. And as I've been looking forward to leaving our current location, I've also been, the last few weeks knowing we have about 8 weeks left here, kind of sad knowing that time is coming to an end and we're going to be saying goodbye to friends and everything is just, so the people you meet definitely have a big impact on how a location can go, regardless of what, kind of stigma might be attached to it. Because Fort Polk, we hear all the time, who wants to go to Fort Polk? That's the most, Fort Polk and Fort Irwin. But I hear from so many friends that have been stationed there, that have lived there, about how much they have loved it because of the people and the community. And so it's always makes a big difference for us. So the last question I want to ask you here is, what piece of advice do you want to pass on to other spouses? Anything that, PCS related, not PCS related, but just what, from your own military spouse life, what advice do you want to pass on to others?
Let's see. You know what? Find your joy. And everybody's joy looks different. For some people, their joy is a quiet space to read. Other people, their joy is having a weekly lunch date with a friend. Others, their joy is getting involved in this organization or that organization. For others, it's having that job. Find what your joy is, and definitely make sure you're filling up on that joy. And it's going to be different in every season and in every duty station you go to. And that's okay that what gives you joy changes. But definitely never let somebody steal your joy or let something ruin your joy, kind of thing. Like fight for that joy. And if you need someone to fill up your joy tank, you just let me know. Like I said, I got a porch. If you're here at Fort Leavenworth, you can come sit on my porch. If it's too cold, we'll sit inside because I do have furniture now. If not, shoot me a message. But it is, there we lose our joy, and sometimes we forget that our joy is important because we put everybody else's joy and happiness ahead of ours and all. But find your joy because that's you, kind of thing. And like I said, everybody's joy looks differently. And so definitely, make sure though you're not losing that. And when you don't know what your joy is, take a minute and sit down and go, where does my heart lie? Kind of thing. And like I said, it's different in every season potentially. And that's okay, but definitely make sure you've got some type of joy in your heart. And when you lose it, definitely find someone who can help you find it again. So.
No, absolutely. Such good words to end on. Just knowing that, holding on to that piece of joy, and knowing that it can change also with each duty station. Because again, different seasons of life, different changes and whatnot, but definitely something good that we all kind of need to remember to have as we go through, this nomadic life and all the challenges that kind of come along with it. So thank you for that. Thank you everybody for joining us today. Thank you, Jackie, for giving us your time today. Join us again next week right here, same time, same place. We're going to be talking about insurance next week, what you need to know about your insurance when you PCS, the renter's insurance, the personal property insurances, what they cover, what they don't, and all of those little details in between that you need to know before your stuff gets packed up on the moving truck this summer. So make sure you join us for that because it's going to be a lot of fun, very informative. So join us. But until then, enjoy the rest of your week. Enjoy the rest of your Wednesday. And we'll see you all next week.